And now here on the 56th weekly Friday show from Radio Free UK, we have our selected episode from our stateside friend, 1DimitriRadio. This week we've selected an item where Dimitri Vasilovos talks about Hillary's good polling numbers and how the media have dumped on Donald Trump. Dimitri broadcasts live at 9 PM Eastern Time and live streams on Facebook, as well as broadcasting his episodes on Blog Talk Radio. His show is typically a half-hour monologue followed by a half-hour interview. This episode's monologue is on the American presidential race, and his interview is with Mark Krikorian of Washington DC Center for Immigration Studies, talking about immigration in general and ideological exclusion, a test the USA used to apply but doesn't any longer. But maybe they should, and maybe it's something that the UK could look at too.
Hey, what's up? We love Burger King grilled dogs. They're made with 100% beef, and they're 100%. They're so good, they make us want to sing like... I can't believe it. Burger King made a grilled dog. Made with 100% beef. Flame grilled anytime you want. You can try it in classic or chili cheese.
Flame grilled and made with 100% beef, starting at just $1.99. Get a grilled dog now at participating Burger King restaurants. Flame grilling hot dogs since 2016. Price and participation vary.
Blog Talk Radio.
Hi. Great show for you tonight. If you were not watching on Facebook Live, that's probably a good thing. Did I say probably? Anyway, terrific show tonight. God, I'm so excited about tonight's show. I can barely stand it. Okay, we've got lots of great news with the Libertarian Presidential Party candidates with Gary Johnson, Bill Weld. Major TV event next week. I'll tell you all about it. I had a great interview tonight with Mark Krikorian. It's recorded. He's the Center for Immigration Studies, and he's come up with something that no one is talking about, no politician, not even Donald Trump, about a solution to this problem with these crazies who are coming over here trying to kill us who are immigrants. So a really provocative issue, and it's a great idea to at least to talk about. Nobody else is talking about that. So that's part of the show tonight as well. Also, lots of gay stuff tonight. I'm not gay. Not that there's anything wrong with being straight, but I just felt that had to be said. First, Hillary Clinton's poll numbers. They have gone through the roof. If you were watching the news the past 24 hours, 48 hours, you would have thought that Hillary Clinton's poll numbers were like the greatest of all time. And she had good poll numbers, but the media is not telling you the rest of the story. I will tell you because, that's what I do. So, okay, we've got all that. Gay issues, of course, the whole thing with Orlando and the shooting, just horrible stuff. Also, Donald Trump and gays. You don't hear much about this. Milo, who is Milo Yiannopoulos at Nero on Twitter, talking about you got to choose. You got to choose either protecting gays or being an apologist for Islam. You cannot have both. That's his position. There's a fair amount of truth to that. There really is. Also, Twitter is doing more censoring of conservatives, and it's insane. Facebook as well with Pamela Geller, because anything connected with criticizing Islam, and you get banned on Facebook and also on Twitter. So I've got all of that for you as well. Lots and lots of great stuff. Where to begin? Well, I'm here at the lifepedigree.com studio. It's at the intersection of freedom and fun, trademark, service mark, copyright, patent pending. I'm Dimitri, the lovable libertarian, trademark, service mark, copyright, patent pending. And we simulcast every weeknight from 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday on blogtalkradio.com, 1DimitriRadio. That's what this is. And this is the studio, and I'm Dimitri, and also on Facebook Live. So welcome to my Facebook Live friends. Welcome to all my listeners here at blogtalkradio.com, and let's get right to it. If you are watching the news, cable news channels, which is pretty much what I do because I really don't have a life. I mean, and what life I do have kind of sucks, but I happen to like news, and I like not just watching it, but absorbing it and trying to understand the real messages. And no, I don't wear a tinfoil hat. I don't get any radio signals or anything like that unless I have a tune-in on my app. Then I get radio signals, but that's different. So anyway, you would have thought that Hillary Clinton has just locked up the presidential election because she finally got some really good poll numbers. And boy, the news channels, also Bloomberg Politics. Bloomberg is a business channel, but they do lots of political stuff, and also they do lots of Bloomberg West with all the stuff happening on the West Coast, which is actually kind of interesting. But they're political stuff. But you got that. You got the MSNBC. They're the same old players. Anyway, they get these poll numbers. It's a poll by Bloomberg, but there's also another one by, I think it was Washington Post. And it shows that Hillary Clinton is doing really well, that she's really, has got like an 8-point lead or something like that over Donald Trump. And man, they just could not have been happier. They could not have been happier. They're going on and on about, well, this means that Donald Trump has got serious problems and he's got to, he's going to lose here and he doesn't have any support among his fellow Republicans and yada, 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 yada. Okay. Before I go on, I always have to say this because when I talk about Donald Trump, sometimes people think that I'm going to vote for him, that I'm a Republican. I am not going to vote for him. I am not a Republican. I am a libertarian. I am the lovable libertarian. I vote only for libertarian candidates. That said, I find the election fascinating, not only for Donald Trump, but Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and all the rest. I just find it fascinating, especially Donald Trump, because what's really weird is I understand this guy. I understand how he thinks. I understand how he operates. All these other people on the channels, the political pundits, they can't figure this guy out. They don't know yet. I'm going, it's as easy as I get it. I absolutely get it. So I think Donald Trump is getting a really raw deal. I really do. I know he's a billionaire. I know he can be obnoxious. I mean, I know this. Believe me, I know this. But he's getting a raw deal. And I don't think that's fair. And so let me tell you what the media has not been telling you this past 24 hours. Okay, Hillary Clinton's poll numbers. Yes, they're good. She has got an 8-point, 9-point lead with these two different polls. It's substantial. It's substantial. Again, this is the beginning of June. Well, actually, not the middle of June. But what the media is not telling you is that, yes, she had the best numbers, but they don't tell you when they conducted the poll. The two polls. They conducted the two polls either during or right after Hillary had the best campaign week of her life. That includes 2008. You see, when they started conducting this poll, again, the media doesn't tell you this stuff, she had either, I almost forgot about this. Remember when the Associated Press declared Hillary Clinton the Democratic Party nominee, that she won the primaries? The Associated Press did this before the California primary, like a day or something before. And I'm losing my mind. A lot of people were like, how can they possibly do this? This isn't right. They put their finger on the scale. The game is rigged. Everybody knows the game is rigged. So the Associated Press is essentially saying, yes, the coronation is official. She has won. Even though we haven't had the election yet in California, we're the Associated Press. So there was that. Then the California primary happened, and also New Jersey and some other states. Hillary Clinton won. Give her credit. She defeated Bernie Sanders, and in California it wasn't close. Part of that, I think, is because the Associated Press, again, got involved before the election saying, don't even bother voting because we say that she's won. So she had all of that going on, and after that, she had the endorsement of President Barack Obama, and then you got Elizabeth Warren, getting involved in this. This was the best week of Hillary Clinton's campaign life, and good for her. She earned it. She did. There's no question. Well, that's when they did the polling. During that whole period and a couple of days afterward, it was like the optimum time for great news for Hillary Clinton. And sure enough, the polls indicated that. Also, Trump wasn't having a great week because of that whole Mexican judge thing, which was his own fault, but whatever. But the thing was, Hillary Clinton had a fantastic week. That's when they did the polling. And so, voila, if you'll pardon my French, of course the polls are looking, great. But the media won't tell you the context of this. They're saying just, these polls, here's proof that everything we've been saying was right, and that, Trump is terrible and awful and he's got problems. It was one incredible week for her, and that's when they did the polling. It kind of coincided with the polling. That's not fair. You're not getting the whole story. That's that's what happened there. All right, that's what happened. Oh, the story, not the story, but the show, with all due respect, with Mark Halpern and John Heisel, I keep forgetting his last name. The first 15 minutes were all about Hillary this and Hillary that and Donald Trump's problems. And then the next 45 minutes were variations on that theme. Oh, they were eating this up. This was like manna from heaven, even though I don't know what manna is, but it must be good because it comes from heaven, if there is a heaven. So there, all right, so there's that. Let's see MSNBC, CNN, all the same thing. When they weren't covering this horrible story in Disney World about the alligator that ate this kid. Did you see this? Oh my God. I still can't understand how Disney World can have a lagoon or something that's not protected from alligators. This poor little kid, I think 2 years old or something, and his parents are there, and he's in like 1 foot of water, whatever it is, in this lagoon at Disney World. An alligator comes up, snatches him, and carries him off. And they just found his remains. And I'm going, what? What? Disney World? You go to Disney World and there's a chance that your child can be eaten by an alligator? That's what happened. I'll never understand it. I'll never understand it. I hope Disney gets sued like you would not believe, because anytime a child can breach a security system, whether it's at Disney World or with the Cincinnati Zoo with the gorilla, or Pittsburgh with the wild dogs that ate that poor child, then it's the zoo's fault. It absolutely is the zoo's fault. Your security system was so bad that a toddler or a 1-year-old or whatever was able to breach your security system. That means it's a bad security system. Now at Disney World, a toddler, a 1-year-old, was able to figure out a way to get in harm's way, and an alligator eating a child. God, Jesus. What's next? It's going to be Meryl Streep. She's going to be starring in this thing. Alligator took my baby. Whatever. So, anyway. Let's see. So, let's get back to, what was I talking about? Oh, Donald Trump, right? And Hillary Clinton and all that. All right, fine. So, the media is going on and on about how Donald Trump has had just this horrible, horrible week. And I'm screaming at the TV because, first, again, I have no life. There's nobody else in the house when I'm typically watching. I just got to focus on the TV. Sometimes I think I'm like Rain Man with ADD or something like that. I don't know. But I can't do math, so I can't be Rain Man. Anyway, so they're going on and on what a terrible week he had. But as I said yesterday, Donald Trump actually had a pretty good week. But it was lost in all these experts because either they don't understand how negotiating works, or they do understand but just don't want to tell you. So I will tell you. They were going on and on about how Hillary Clinton and President Barack Obama were firing at Donald Trump. They were making these great speeches, and the speeches sound like the same thing. They were both the same talking points, the same everything. And the media was going on and on about how this was such a great thing. And I'm screaming at the TV, going, no, you don't get it. That was actually a bad thing for them. Now, why would I say that? Well, what Donald Trump did there was what he had done a while back with that whole birther thing with President Barack Obama. Donald Trump was going on and on about that birther thing. Where's the long-form birth certificate? Raising all these questions about, is he really a Kenyan or what, and all that stuff. But what Donald Trump did, whether you agree with it or not, we can set that aside. What Donald Trump did is he made the President of the United States answerable to Donald Trump. Because Donald Trump put so much pressure on Barack Obama that Barack Obama was forced to produce his long-form birth certificate, which he did. Okay. Donald Trump won that round. Anytime you're negotiating, I used to be in residential. I used to do lots of things. I mean, so many different things in my career. It's ridiculous. My resume, if you would see my resume, it's like it was put together by somebody with ADD or something. I don't know, because I'm like all over the place. Real estate, car sales, and radio and TV and writing and newspapers and debt collector, and I've done everything. I've done everything. That's why with my next gig, I'm going to send my resume to lifepedigree.com. Lifepedigree.com studio, big backers of the show. my resume, the one good thing about my resume is that I tell the truth. And the reason I tell the truth is not because I'm an honest guy, but because my memory's not all that great. And if you're going to lie, the one thing you really have to have, including no conscience, is you've got to have a really good memory. Because if you don't have a really good memory, lies tend to come back and blow up in your face. And I don't have a good memory. In fact, I forgot what I was talking about here. Memory. Oh, yes, good. I don't have a good memory. So, but everything on my resume is the truth. So I would send my resume to lifepedigree.com next time I'm looking for a gig. If this thing doesn't work out, then I may be looking for a gig. And what lifepedigree.com does is they check the resume. They make all the phone calls. They say, did Dimitri actually do this during this period of time and this, that, and they go, yeah, you did. So they check everything. And when everything checks out on my resume, lifepedigree.com puts a seal of approval on it. Then when I send the resume out, it's got the lifepedigree.com seal of approval. And so HR knows that, hey, this guy actually is telling the truth. He looks crazy, but he's telling the truth. And here's proof that lifepedigree.com has said, yeah, he's telling the truth. So I think my resume is going to go to the top of the resume pile. So lifepedigree.com, great. All right, so where was I? Oh, yes, negotiating. Donald Trump actually had a great week because Donald Trump managed to get both President Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton to answer to him. If you noticed their speeches a couple days ago, they both were trying to explain to the American public, but really to Donald Trump, why they don't use the phrase radical Islamic terrorism. They were on the defensive. Their whole speech was, both of them, their speeches, they were trying to explain, trying to justify why they were not using that phrase. Now, it doesn't matter how you feel about that phrase. You can say, yes, it's a good thing, or no, it's a bad thing, or whatever. Set that aside. We're talking here simply about the, I guess simply talking about who's in the better position, better negotiating position. Donald Trump keeps bringing this stuff up, and he forced them, both the President of the United States and Hillary Clinton, to be on the defensive to explain why they weren't using that phrase. Anytime your opponent has got you answering to him when he is setting the agenda, you are not in a good negotiating position. And what Donald Trump did this week is that he got both the President of the United States and the Democratic Party nominee, Hillary Clinton, he got them back on their heels. They were both in a defensive posture. They were answering to Donald Trump. They were explaining to the American public why they aren't using radical Islamic terrorism. Donald Trump won that. And yet you look at these guys and the political pundits and all that on the cable news channels, they didn't even mention it. I'm going, do you not understand the incredible success that Donald Trump had this week, getting both of these people to answer to him? I mean, that's just remarkable. And it's the second time he did this with Barack Obama. It's just amazing. So I think Donald Trump actually had a pretty good week. Now, one other thing a number of other things with Trump, he fascinates me. I must tell you, he fascinates me. To me, he is the political version of Howard Stern. And I get Howard, look at all these wrinkles that I have on my shirt. Look at this. What is that? What the hell? What is that? All right, you didn't see that. So anyway, he's the political version of Howard Stern, and I so get Howard Stern. That's why I get Donald Trump. It's the same thing, except he's in politics. Donald Trump is getting grief from the left because he is trying to say that, hey, we've got a real concern here with people coming from the Middle East. Most of them happen to be Muslim, and we can't properly vet them. And we need to stop with the immigration here until our country figures out what the heck it's doing here. And it's a legitimate point. Now, you can agree with it, you can disagree with it, but it's a legitimate point. It's not some, crazy thing like there's, like space aliens, but it's something that, reasonable people can have a reasonable discussion and have reasonable disagreements about it. And when you look at what a miserable job this government did in not properly vetting not only this shooter in Orlando, but also the two shooters in San Bernardino. And they were all, at least two of the three were American-born. If our government is so inept that it cannot properly vet American-born terrorists, then what are the odds that it's going to properly vet immigrants coming from countries that are torn apart because of terrorism? I mean, it's a legitimate point that Donald Trump is raising. He's saying, wait a minute, our government failed with an American-born terrorist with Orlando, an American-born terrorist in San Bernardino, a woman who came over and was supposedly properly vetted. She came over from Saudi Arabia, from Pakistan originally, but again, not properly vetted. Well, if the government can't do even that, then what are the odds that it's going to do a good job of protecting us from people, immigrants coming over from these war-torn countries that really do want to kill us? It's a legitimate question. I mean, he's raising a legitimate point. Whether you agree with open borders immigration or not, and it's like, people are trying to kill us. Don't take my word for it. Take theirs, because they're telling us that, and they follow through. So, I mean, if you believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and anyone who tries to stop you from exercising these rights, well, that's one of the roles of government, I would think. The government's got to protect us from people who are trying to limit or prevent us from exercising our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I don't think that's an unreasonable position. I really don't. All right. With that, I'm going to segue into something else here. A lot of gay stuff tonight. A lot of gay issues. Not that there's anything wrong with it. The narrative with the media is that Donald Trump hates people, he's a hater, and all this and all that. Well, when it comes to gays, somebody who said, I know I'm not going to do this right, but you've come to expect that of me. Someone once said that socially conservative people who don't like gays wanted God to put all the gays in America on one island and just be done with it. And apparently God did that, because the island is Manhattan. Apparently there are a lot of gays in Manhattan, on Manhattan Island, which is New York City, between the rivers, the Harlem and the East, and it's an island. It's Manhattan is what it is. Okay. Donald Trump does all his business there. Anything that you've heard about Donald Trump, think about this. Anything that you've heard about Donald Trump, about, he's terrible with women and terrible with blacks and Hispanics, have you ever heard anyone say that Donald Trump doesn't like gays, that he's got a problem with gays, any sort of thing with gays? I haven't. I haven't at all. From everything that I've heard and read, including stuff on Twitter from openly gay people who are actively involved in politics, like Milo Yiannopoulos at Nero, like Chris Barron and some others, they all say the same thing, that Donald Trump is actually probably the most gay-friendly Republican ever. No issue with gays. No issue at all. I mean, he lives in Manhattan. That's where, like, all the gays, they're in San Francisco. I mean, it's just not a problem. Now, why am I bringing that up? Well, for a couple of reasons. It's going to segue beautifully into 3 or 4 different topics tonight. I mean, future broadcast professionals, you might want to save the video of tonight's show or download it at blogtalkradio.com, because this is just, it's going to be beautiful. Do you know where Donald Trump was today? Probably not. I'll tell you, Atlanta. Now, again, the media narrative is that he's a terrible person, that he's a hater, and, he's just awful, and he hates everyone, and everything is terrible, and, the Republican establishment can't stand him, and he's got all these high negatives, which he does, but he had high negatives in the Republican primary and killed the competition. So, and Hillary had really high negatives in the Democratic primary, and she won overwhelmingly. So this whole thing about, these really high negatives, this is awful. Like, both of them have really high negatives, and they both won. So what's the big deal? All right. So the narrative with Donald Trump, with the media, is that his campaign is failing. Hillary is killing him with the latest poll results, even though they're skewed, and that Donald Trump hates everyone, except white men. And we all know what that means, of course, that he's a racist on top of everything else. That's the narrative. You never hear the media say anything good about Donald Trump, especially when it comes to women, even though he's really employed a lot of women, high positions and everything. I mean, it's really quite remarkable. And you never hear the media say anything about Donald Trump even liking gays. But he does. There's no problem with him. So back to the Atlanta thing. You know where he was in Atlanta today? Well, he had a big fundraiser, and he got a lot of high-profile people, like the head of Home Depot and some other big-deal companies, to donate lots of money for the Republican Party and him and all that. Fine. But he held this event, this public event, at the, I believe it's called the Fox Theater. It's in Atlanta, and apparently it was a big success. Well, the Fox Theater in Atlanta, from what I've read, is in the heart of the gay section or gay community in Atlanta. Now, of all the places to have a rally, a Donald Trump rally in Atlanta, why would he pick that one? I don't think it was a coincidence. I don't. I think he's making a statement, and that from everything that I've read from openly gay, politically active people, they're saying that, Donald Trump really doesn't have a problem with gays. I know he's a Republican. He's supposed to be a hater, and, Democrats are supposed to be our buddies, but, he doesn't really have a problem with gays. By the way, the person who took the longest to finally say that she was in favor of same-sex marriage, Hillary Clinton. Go figure. All right, so there's that. By the way, I was watching last night's show on my timeline because it's simulcast on Facebook Live as well as blogtalkradio.com. And I noticed that I say, so there's that a lot. And that's sort of like a transition thing, but boy, I was really beating it to death. So if you have nothing better to do, and if you want to have like a drinking game with me, which is kind of ironic because I don't drink, what you could do is take a shot of ginger ale or something anytime I say, so there's that. So I had no idea how much I was saying it as a transition, as a segue to some other topic, but I do say that a lot. So I'm trying to watch that. It's still difficult. I've already said it, I think, at least 3 or 4 or 59 times tonight. I'll try to watch that. But if you have nothing better to do with your life, first, I'm really sorry for you. But then, okay, at least you'll have an interesting drinking game. Well, Dimitri said, so there's that. That kind of a thing. So there's, yes, well, Twitter. Twitter is dying. It's really sad. This guy, Jack Dorsey, is the person who created Twitter, along with some other people. And he's pretty much in charge of it, although now Twitter is owned primarily by a Saudi prince. Twitter's actually owned by somebody in Saudi Arabia. And again, that's fine if it's a business. It's, you can buy the stock, and you can buy it pretty cheap these days because Twitter's pretty much dying. And one big reason why it's dying is because it is run so poorly. They have a political agenda, and they make no bones about it. They have something called, I think it's called the Safety and Trust Committee, and it's comprised of an awful lot of very politically left-leaning groups. And they don't like anyone who doesn't like feminism or anyone who's a conservative. And this has been an ongoing problem with Twitter for quite a while now. And the user experience with Twitter keeps going down and down. And there are an awful lot of really important conservative voices, libertarian voices that are being shut down with shadow banning and also losing their little blue check mark and 101 other ways that Twitter essentially is censoring conservative and libertarian thought. I mean, I can see it. It's really obvious. Well, today, do you remember, I'm getting ahead of myself. Do you remember, I think it was yesterday or maybe 2 days ago, I talked with you about Milo Yiannopoulos. This guy is openly gay, flamboyantly so. He's from England, and it's part of his routine. He's a commentator, provocateur, very smart guy. Very, very smart guy, and very, very gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But he really plays up the gay thing to like the nth degree. And I'm not going to go into all the gory details, but he leaves nothing to the imagination. That said, he's also very smart, very thoughtful, very articulate for an English guy. And he does not pull any punches regarding the threat of, well, Islam to gay people. He was the one who brought up that there are at least 10 or so countries in the Middle East where that are run by supposedly moderate Muslims, where there's actually a death penalty for anyone who is gay. You just have to be gay and they will kill you. Iran, Saudi Arabia, certainly the ISIS, which is just an extension of what used to be the Iraqi Ba'ath Party and all that kind of stuff, and many others. I mean, it's just horrible stuff. And so Milo, who on Twitter goes by @Nero, writes for Breitbart. And again, he's a very smart, bright guy. If you can get past the over-the-top gay shtick, which is very crude sometimes. I mean, like X-rated sometimes funny, sometimes just he's a provocateur. And, even I'm wincing some of the time. It's like, dude, okay, fine. I get you're smart. I get you're clever. But, yeah. But if you can get past that, especially if you're politically conservative, this guy is worth a listen and worth a read. He really is. He's very, very smart. So what does this have to do with Twitter? Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm talking to myself. My God, what's the matter with me? Twitter banned Milo today. And the general consensus is, because Twitter won't say, but the general consensus is because Milo wrote a piece that said, in essence, that Americans, liberals, the West, has to choose between saving gays and being an apologist for Islam. I mean, it's just that simple. And it's not just the radical jihadists who hate gays and want to kill them. That's actually government policy in at least 10 countries in the Middle East. And he is seeing what's going on in England, in Europe. And he's trying to warn America, look, this is coming here. And this is especially bad for gays, especially bad. Milo's actually politically conservative. He loves Donald Trump. He's one of the gay, openly gay political commentators who's saying Donald Trump is great on gays. He's terrific. Well, not great on gays, but you know what I'm, Well, Twitter banned him. And this was like the big thing today on Twitter. And it's really a shame because Twitter used to be pretty good. It was a great opportunity for you to interact with all sorts of different people. And they were like top conservative on Twitter or, whatever it happens to be. Hold on a second. I got a little thing going on here. And anyway, so there's a hashtag. In fact, I've got the story right here. Twitter appears to censor popular hashtag. And here's the hashtag, gays for Trump. And there's a story that I have here about the gays for Trump hashtag. It was essentially banned on Twitter. They did it in such a way that it hardly ever appeared. However, there's another one that does not have anywhere near the popularity and yet showed up a lot more, and that is the hashtag LGBTQ hates Trump party. And long story short, Twitter rigged this so that the gays for Trump hashtag would barely appear, even though it's wildly popular. Meanwhile, the other one, the LGBTQ hates Trump party, very unpopular, appears a lot using the Twitter analytics. So the fix continues to be in with Twitter, as it is with Facebook. They banned Pamela Geller's thing about, again, raising questions about Islam and what it's doing. I mean, and it's not a bigoted religious thing. It's like a political thing. They're trying to kill us, for God's sake. And let's see, another one here. Twitter bans gay conservative Milo after anti-Islam tweets. There was so much commotion about that. There were so many upset people that Twitter eventually got him back on Twitter. However, took away most of his followers. He had roughly, 200,000 followers. And then after Twitter finally allowed him back on, he was down like 38,000 followers. Twitter's rigged. Twitter's absolutely rigged. Politically left, which again is fine if you're just honest about it. But They play these games all the time. I've lost so much faith in Twitter. In fact, I've lost all faith in Twitter. Pretty soon this thing's going to collapse. It really is. And this is what he wrote. The left choose Islam over gays. Now 100 people are dead or maimed in Orlando. And this is part of what Milo wrote on Breitbart. And it's a very thoughtful piece. And he's saying, look what's happening in Europe. Look at what's happening. That Islam is so not tolerant of gays that they try to kill them. And they try to make life miserable. And it's just, oh, my God. So he's raising, I think, a really, really good point. All right. One more thing, if I may, and then I've got a great interview for you. Mark Krikorian. And I'll give you a little heads up. It's called, I had it here somewhere. Ideological exclusion. Have you ever heard of this phrase? Chances are this is the first you've heard of this. Wait till you hear this interview. Now, this interview is going to be only on blogtalkradio.com, 1DimitriRadio, because I recorded it today. Mark Krikorian, Center for Immigration Studies. And so that's where you're going to be hearing it. You can always download the episodes anytime you want, or when we're streaming now, Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. But it's really a fascinating idea, and maybe we should start doing this again, because we had done this. And this is one way to solve the problem of bringing in immigrants who actually do want to kill us. So it's wonderful. You've not heard this anywhere else. I can't wait for you to hear this. That's how excited I am about this interview, because it was like a revelation to me. So I know it's going to be a revelation to most of my friends. But finally, Libertarian Party. I'm a libertarian, of course. This is great stuff. Libertarian Party ticket to appear at CNN Town Hall. Can you believe this? CNN Town Hall, Libertarian Party, next Wednesday. This is amazing. Up until now, it's been either Republicans or Democrats at the town hall. My beloved Libertarian Party, the presidential ticket of Gary Johnson, former governor of New Mexico, and Bill Weld, former governor of Massachusetts. While they're not the ideal libertarians, they're libertarians. These are our guys. And now there's been so much commotion, so much interest in the Libertarian Party. Polling has been about 10%, some 9%, some 12%. And they're all over TV. It's just amazing. And I think what really is going on here. I know the cable channels, other than Fox, of course, have a politically liberal bias. You know, MSNBC, Bloomberg Politics, CNN, their broadcast networks. So why would they be interested in the Libertarian Party? Because this year, Libertarian Party has been on MSNBC and CNN and Bloomberg. It's amazing. It's like a godsend. Thank you, God. What I think is really happening here is that the politically liberal news channels are going, we hate Donald Trump. We have to do whatever we can to stop this guy. What if we started playing up the Libertarian Party ticket? Because these two former governors were former Republicans. And so the thinking is that the voter might decide to go, instead of Donald Trump, might decide to go Libertarian. So what I think is really happening here, and again, this is to our benefit, the Libertarian Party. I mean, however we get it, I'm glad. But what I really think is happening is that the news channels, cable news channels, are going, if we play up the Libertarian Party ticket, the Libertarian Party might siphon enough votes away from Republicans so that Hillary wins. I do think it's as simple as that. What they don't know is that, study after study, Libertarian Party candidates get about as many former Democrats as former Republicans, because the Libertarian Party started in 1971, and it was inspired not only because of all the crazy stuff that Richard Nixon was doing with taking us off the gold standard and wage and price controls, but there were also a lot of hippies, a lot of leftists who were anti-war. And so we got together, I was there, got together and formed the Libertarian Party. And one of the, not the dirty little secret, but one of the interesting things that the media never seems to get is that Libertarian Party candidates, whether they get 1% of the vote or 10% or whatever, typically draw from as many people who identify as progressives, as liberals, as they do conservatives. But what do I care? I mean, if the cable news channels think that, well, if we get these libertarians on and really build this up, it might cost Donald Trump. Well, okay, but you're going to find, in fact, I'm quite sure of this, you're going to find that a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters are going to vote libertarian because they cannot stand Hillary Clinton. They're opposed to insane militarism, and Hillary Clinton is like this crazy Democrat war hawk. They hate Donald Trump. The Libertarian Party, I believe, is going to get as many votes from the left as it is from the right, because that's how actually we're structured. That is how we're structured. Anyway, so look for this next Wednesday, CNN Town Hall, Libertarian Party presidential ticket at its own town hall. This is the best time in the world for libertarians. It really is. This is great stuff. Oh, so we covered a lot of territory here. I think that's about it for me tonight. I mean, I could go on talking like, forever, but I'm not going to. So what we're going to do now is we're going to end the Facebook Live part of our simulcast. But before we do, if you know anyone who would like to follow me, then please share this on their timelines. Let them know about this. Send an email. Do whatever you need to do and message them. So if you could spread the word about our show, our simulcast, that would be great. We stream live every Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time on blogtalkradio.com. The show's 1DimitriRadio. I'm Dimitri. And also on Facebook Live. And if you do this, if you spread the word to like all your friends and everyone in your email list and all that, and you let them know, hey, there's this great show, this great guy who's really entertaining and informative, and all these wonderful things that I know you're thinking, I think they'll appreciate it. They will appreciate you. And so you're not going to be doing this so much for my benefit as you are going to be doing it for your own benefit, because I believe that when you tell all your friends about this, they'll really appreciate you even more than they do now, and they will be thanking you, going, God, geez, I really appreciate you letting me know about Dimitri and 1DimitriRadio and the simulcast and all this kind of stuff. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So don't do it for my sake. Do it for your sake. I'm just here to help you. That's just all. That's it. So friend me on Facebook or follow me on Facebook. And you can also friend me on Twitter. It's 1DimitriRadio or Dimitri Vassilaris, Dimitri with 3 I's. And if you have an idea for a guest, like, for example, let's say you wrote a book or something, or you're leading some cause or doing whatever, and you think my listeners might be interested, well, send me an email, 1DimitriRadio at 1DimitriRadio.com, or message me or DM me and give me your pitch. Let me know why you think my listeners would care about what you have to say. And if I think that they would, I'll be more than happy to record the interview and play it. Happy to do it. So that's about it for tonight. Thank you again so much for listening. And our views are really going up a lot on Facebook Live. This is really terrific stuff. I hope it continues. Maybe we're just on a lucky streak right now. I don't know. Or what I hope is that we're building and building and building an audience, and our downloads keep increasing on blogtalkradio.com. So I think we're doing something right, even though I can't seem to get any kind of good clothing. God, look at all the wrinkles on this thing. Jesus. And this is really way too big. Plus, I've got all this going on here. But anyway, so it's a work in progress. So there it is. All right, let's start the interview here with Mark Krikorian, and it is Ideological Exclusion. It's an idea, concept that even Donald Trump is not talking about, but as we start getting the word out, and I believe it's the only place you've ever heard this, and I can't wait for you to actually hear this interview regarding this topic, because it blew me away. Maybe we need to do a lot more of this and get this idea out into the marketplace of ideas. Let people start thinking about this and going, that actually makes sense. And we used to do this in America. We don't do this anymore. It might be time to start doing this again. And Mark Krikorian is going to explain all of this to you, because Mark Krikorian is great radio. He is like one of the best radio interviews you could ever have. He's very knowledgeable, absolutely laser focused, knows what he's talking about, speaks in short, simple sentences, terrific, just great radio. So enjoy the interview, and we'll do it again, God willing, tomorrow evening, 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Blog Talk Radio and on Facebook Live. So I'm on Drudge, and I'm looking at the latest headlines, the latest links, and this thing jumps out at me. Illegal immigrants who overstay visas hardly ever caught. And it turns out this past year, 480,000 people who overstayed their visas are in this country, and that adds to the total of roughly 5 million in America. And I thought to myself, golly, I wonder if the mom and dad of that shooter in Orlando could possibly be two of those people, or could there be other people involved here with this that somehow has contributed to all of this radical Islamic terrorism here in this country? And what do I know about immigration or pretty much anything at all? I don't know. So I thought, okay, who do I go to? Who do I talk to? And of course, my go-to guy when it comes to anything connected with immigration is Mark Krikorian. He's the head of the Center for Immigration Studies in Washington, D.C. It is the place to go to for any kind of information regarding immigration. And now, in light of what's going on with this whole Orlando shooting and all the backstories, the incredible backstories with this, I thought this was a great time to talk with him to get the latest about what is happening with immigration, not dealing with the media, but going directly to the source. So, Mark Krikorian, welcome to 1Dimitri Radio. How you doing?
Glad to be here. Thank you.
All right. You, what do you know about this Orlando shooting, and is there any connection to America's immigration policy with it?
Well, as far as we can tell, the parents were legally here. They were admitted in the 1980s from Afghanistan, and we took in a significant number of people. We still don't know how they got in. In other words, were they admitted as refugees or what? But they don't seem to be illegal immigrants. On the other hand, you know, this does raise concerns not about enforcement of immigration laws, but what should our immigration laws be? In other words, should we really be admitting people, in this case the father of the shooter, who it turns out he's a Taliban supporter, and, you know, why should we be admitting people, even if you were admitted as a refugee, which is entirely possible? Why was that a good idea, since there were other places that refugees, Pakistan in particular, was taking in Afghan refugees? Why would we have taken this person into the United States? And this is something that's relevant, I think, now to refugee and just broader immigration issues. Shouldn't we be trying to screen people, especially from the Islamic world, not so much just on terrorist membership or violent activities, which sort of goes without saying, but rather beliefs and perspectives that are basically contrary to American values? For instance, and it may not have worked here, but for instance, it seems to me as a rule, we should be asking people coming here to live permanently, not visitors so much, but people coming here to live, do you believe the government should punish people for insulting religious figures, or that people who change their religion should be punished, or that homosexuals should be killed? Now, people are going to lie, probably, but some people won't lie, and even if they don't lie, the government has now said to them explicitly, if you do believe these things, you have no place in America.
Is that something that we had done in this country, where immigrants would come in and we would check to make sure they weren't crazies at any point in American history, or is this something new you're proposing, Mark Krikorian?
No, it's not really something new. It's basically restoring something that we got rid of in 1990. And the label that it was applied to it was ideological exclusion. In other words, excluding people, keeping people out based on their ideological beliefs rather than simply membership. And the reason we got rid of it is the Cold War ended, and we figured history was over. But before that, you could have been turned away from the United States even if you weren't an actual member of the Communist Party, but if you had, expressed beliefs or statements or associations that were, clearly contrary to American interests. In other words, if you said you were a communist and you were all for, the Soviet, the workers' paradise and all this stuff, even if you weren't a spy, you could still be turned away. It wasn't used all that often, and it's a blunt instrument that we should be using with discretion, but the tool was there. In 1990, we got rid of it. And so what the law now says is that you cannot be turned away, you cannot be denied entry to the United States if, based on your beliefs, statements, or associations, if those things would be legal for somebody in the United States. In other words, we applied the First Amendment to every foreigner abroad. And sorry, but the ability to speak your mind and say what you want to do, even if it's dumb, even if it's really bad, does apply to our fellow citizens. You can burn the flag. You're a scumbag if you do it, in my opinion, but that's not illegal. But if you're burning the flag every Tuesday at the Death to America rally in Karachi, Pakistan, sorry, you should be kept out, even if you're not a member of a terrorist group, even if you're not giving money to a terrorist group. The very fact that you hate America should be reason enough to keep you out, and I think we should add to that things like if you think it's okay to throw gay people off the roof of a building to kill them, if you think it's okay to kill people who convert to Christianity, then you don't get to come here, even though those things, those views are things that if an American said, as repulsive as it is, you're not punished. But if you're a foreigner, you don't get to move here if you believe those things. Right now, that's not the way the law is, and it seems to me a no-brainer to at least start there and see how much good that does.
And it's called ideological exclusion, is that the term?
Right, yes, that's the label people use for it.
And we had that in our country for how many decades before it was eliminated in the 1990s?
1990s when we got rid of it. It would have been in there since the 1952 version of the immigration law, and probably earlier because, I'm talking about 100-plus years ago, anarchists, for instance, were excludable, even if they weren't bomb throwers. If you were just an anarchist, you were kept out. Well, it's the same idea, that letting in people who believe that, Islamic law should supplant the Constitution and that apostates should be killed and gays should be killed, that, we don't want you here. If our fellow citizens believe that sort of thing, well, we're kind of stuck with it. But we don't have to let any more people in who believe that sort of thing. And right now, we cannot keep people out based on those kind of beliefs.
I'm amazed that this is the first time that I'm hearing this. This is just amazing to me, Mark. I'm so delighted that you're on this program right now, 1DimitriRadio, talking about this, and you're bringing up this really important point. And as you're explaining this, I'm going, why is it this is the first time I'm hearing this? Why isn't this a big part of the discussion going on right now regarding immigration? Is anybody else talking about this?
Not really very much. In fact, nobody that I can identify. It's important for listeners to understand that if you, gave money to Hezbollah, then we can keep you out. Let alone if you're a member of, Al-Qaeda or Hezbollah or something like that. The issue here is your beliefs and views. And there is this almost pathological, non-judgmental view that the First Amendment should apply to everybody everywhere. And that's crazy. It's just crazy. And it seems to me for a politician to say, look, we're going to put a very, a pretty high bar. In other words, we're not going to exclude people just because once in anger they said, what are these Americans doing, with drones? I hate that. That's not. We're talking about people who have expressed clear, consistent views that they hate America and they hate American values, even if they've never belonged to any kind of group. That, it seems to me, is a no-brainer. How are liberals going to say, no, we should definitely let in people who want to kill gays? Really, it's just so obvious.
They're saying it now, Mark. They're saying it now.
Yeah, well, sure they are. But, anyway, the point is this is an obvious issue, and yet this pathological non-judgmentalism, I guess is one way to put it, is so pervasive that you can't even get Republican politicians to say, look, this is an obvious thing. Let's take this first step Sure, people will lie. It's not a silver bullet. It's not going to solve everything. But it puts down a marker that in America, this is a minimum thing, and if you don't meet this minimum standard of not wanting to kill apostates and gays, then, you don't get to come in here regardless of anything else.
And if they have religious beliefs that it's okay to circumcise girls, we could keep them out for that reason as well, and other religious beliefs if they're opposed to gay marriage or whatever, or now does it become a religious test?
Well, it isn't a religious test because the point is not how do you identify yourself. See, this is the problem with Trump's talk about, we got to keep all the Muslims out. It's not a question of what you call yourself. In other words, you say, hi, I'm a Muslim, or I pray 5 times a day, I fast during Ramadan, I think Mohammed, flew on the back of his horse from Jerusalem, whatever. Who cares? It's none of anybody's business. You believe in transmigration of souls, or the ascension, the assumption of the Virgin Mary, whatever. That's nobody's business. It's the political manifestations of which may be from religion or may not be that are the problem. And you don't get to say it's my religion to believe that homosexuals should be killed at any opportunity. You don't get to cover that, protect that by saying, yeah, but that's a religious view. That's not acceptable regardless of where that view came from. And that's what I mean by we should set the bar pretty high. It's not, I like Hillary Clinton, okay, you don't get to come in or whatever. It's that
I'd actually go for that one.
I know. I mean, in my sort of more despairing moments, I might too. But the point is something that that is broad, that we have a broad consensus that violates the very basic principles. If you reject the principles of the Constitution of self-government, basically, in other words, you reject government by consent of the governed is another thing. It seems to me pretty basic, which would exclude you now, even under current law, from becoming a citizen. There are things like that. You have to show attachment to the principles of the Constitution in order to become a U.S. citizen. Now, the standard for that is very watered down. It doesn't really mean that much, but it is in the law. But that's fine. But the fact is, something like that should be the standard we use for even being allowed to live here. Not necessarily to visit. If you're coming for a convention in Houston for 3 days, and you actually go home when you're done, I don't care what you think about killing gays. That's, you're leaving, you're not becoming part of our society. But somebody coming here to stay for long periods of time should not be permitted to do so if he rejects the basis of our constitutional government and values.
And that would include then anyone who says, yes, I believe in Sharia law. It's like, well, sorry, this is the Constitution, and that takes precedent, and so you're not allowed in. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, quite frankly. I mean, if you think Sharia law is okay for, Saudi Arabia or something, but, don't think, in other words, the point here is, do you think Sharia law should take precedence over the Constitution of the United States? If your answer is yes, then sorry, go somewhere else.
Why the hell haven't people in both parties stood up and said, this is a common sense approach so we don't end up committing suicide by bringing in people whose goal in life is to kill us? I can't believe this is the first time I've heard of this ideological exclusion, something we've been doing since the 1950s and probably even before that. And it ended in 1990, I guess, under Bush 41, and no one's even talking about it now.
No, we aren't. I mean, the people are thinking about it only in terms of terrorist organizations. And see, that's the difference. The problem here is, in other words, a difference in perception of the problem. What is the problem we're facing? Is it simply terrorist groups or individuals with bombs and guns, on the one hand, and that's obviously a problem, or is it also what Andy McCarthy, who's a writer on these issues, calls the grand jihad, which is to say threats to our social order and our constitutional order and our values. In other words, not violent threats, but threats that would change the way our society works. This is something Europe is way farther down the slope than we are in accommodating, Sharia and Islamic beliefs. Women are now having to cover themselves up in certain places, even if they're not Muslim, just to protect themselves. This kind of thing. It's much, much worse in Europe than here. But my point is there's two problems. One is guys with guns and bombs, and the other is the bigger, but I would say more serious problem of importing people who reject the basis of liberal democracy. And that second part is something a lot of people, including politicians, just can't bring themselves to talk about because it's discriminatory or racist or whatever. And what we need to make clear is this isn't about whether you pray 5 times a day to Mecca. That's your business. Who cares? It's whether you think it's okay for the government, even if the decision is arrived at democratically, if you think it's okay for the government to kill gays and kill apostates. If you think that's okay, even if you're perfectly peaceful and you're hardworking and you give blood and your kids are well behaved, if you believe that stuff, you have no place in our society and we need to keep you out.
Well, I think this is a breath of fresh air. Frankly, I'm stunned. I cannot get over how stunned I am. This is the first time that I've heard this concept. And with all the stuff going on right now in America, that no one, not even Donald Trump, is even discussing this. So I'm frankly thrilled that we're introducing this to the world, as far as I know, here with 1DimitriRadio, and I also simulcast on Facebook Live weeknights, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Like when this thing was in place, this ideological exclusion, anyone who was a member of the Communist Party trying to move to America was excluded. Is that right?
Well, theoretically. I mean, not everybody ended up being excluded, but yes, the point was to keep out, not just members of the Communist Party, because that was already excluded. Well, even now, something like that would be excluded because you're a member of an organization that promotes totalitarianism in the context of the Communist Party. The issue is, even if you're not a party member, in the communist terms, if you were a fellow traveler, in other words, you didn't have a Communist Party card, you weren't a member, but you believed in the same thing. You believed in the dictatorship of the proletariat and the overthrow of the Constitution. You could still be kept out. And now you can't.
This is unbelievable. As God is my witness, I'm just so stunned. This is just unbelievable. Is there anything else connected with this issue, the ideological exclusion? There are no politicians who are championing this thing. Any other angle regarding this concept before we move on to the rest of our interview? Because I'm stunned. I'm just so stunned about this. This is amazing to me.
I think we've said pretty much everything there is to say about this.
All right.
This
good.
issue.
All right. You mentioned something earlier that kind of flew under my radar screen. The father of the killer in Orlando supports the Taliban?
Yeah, apparently that's what the reports have seen. I don't know anything about the guy, but yes, I've seen press reports that he's a Taliban supporter, and I don't mean that he sent money to them. I don't know. I think he's a sympathizer, might be a better way to put it. And he's like some kind of small-time politician who's talked about running for president in Afghanistan or something. So that doesn't really that gives us no direct influence on the guy who did the shooting because he was born here and is a U.S. citizen. But what it points to is that when you take in large numbers of immigrants from backward places like Afghanistan, where people are very, prone to hold benighted, I would say even medieval views on politics, you create a kind of breeding ground for views like those held by the Orlando shooter. Now, there's always going to be some people who have sort of malign, malevolent views, but when you're taking large numbers of immigrants, especially from Islamic societies, and, Islam has a kind of unique problem in dealing with modern life. If there's one family like that, it may not make much difference. But if you've got a community like that, it reinforces itself. And it can, in fact, lead, like you see, for instance, in Minneapolis with the Somali community. All kinds of U.S.-born kids of Somali families have gone to fight with Al-Shabaab, which is the terrorist group in Somalia, or with ISIS itself. So the problem here isn't just do we do a good job in screening people. It's also if we let in large numbers of people from a culture that, frankly, is struggling with dealing with modern life, some of those people are going to do fine, but some of them aren't.
Okay, help me understand this, because I thought in America we did a much better job of absorbing foreigners. They come over, and then their kids are so Americanized, and then it's like they might as well have been here like 100 years. What is it about what seems to be mostly the Muslim, Middle Eastern, and, well, Somalia too? What is it about those immigrants who come over here that their kids are not Americanized, that in fact they revert back to the 7th century? What is it about these people?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things. First is that the children of immigrants, or immigrants, who maybe came as infants and grew up here, but the point is, kids in immigrant families who've grown up in the United States, it actually is kind of it can be a difficult thing. They're kind of caught between two worlds. The grandchildren of immigrants, it's a little different. They're kind of more, they not only were they here, but their parents were born here. So they don't undergo some of the same identity stresses. And the immigrants themselves, at least have the old country culture that they grew up in. And we're seeing this in Europe, where it's the children of immigrants who are the source of a lot of this problem. And, the children of immigrants, wherever they come from, face these kind of identity struggles. It's the children of Islamic immigrants, though, because Islam really is struggling. Everywhere in the world has a difficult time dealing with the situation that exists now in the modern world. It's who turn, when faced with this identity crisis, turn to what they see as their identity, even if they're not all that familiar with it, and take it up like a cudgel. And you see that again in Europe, and you're seeing it here. It's not clear to me that we do that much a better job, because not only the Orlando shooter, remember the Fort Hood shooter,
right, was
American-born, and not just American-born, but reasonably successful. I mean, he was a Army officer and a shrink. I mean, he wasn't some guy just working odd jobs. We've seen other shooters like this, other terrorists, Islamic terrorists who were born here of immigrant families. Well, the husband in the San Bernardino shooting was born in the United States. So, my point is that suggests that simply screening immigrants themselves isn't necessarily sufficient, that there really is a problem with letting in large numbers of people from cultures that are having problems dealing with the modern world.
Did we always have this problem here in America with other peoples, other cultures, or does it seem to be unique to Middle Eastern Muslims?
I don't think it's not unique. I mean, unique is a strong word. I mean, we've clearly had problems with disaffected, the children of immigrants kind of struggling to find their way in America. And that's not a unique problem to Muslims. But the way that it expresses itself and the depth of the hatred that it results in for America, that does seem to be a uniquely Islamic problem. And, because it stretches, like you said, not, from Somalia and Yemen to people from Algeria or Egypt or Syria or Iraq, it does suggest that this is not a national issue. In other words, immigrants from a particular country, but it is immigrants who have grown up in Islamic cultures because, the children of immigrants from Hindu or Buddhist or even Christian backgrounds have similar problems in adjusting to America, and they're sort of developing an American identity. But they're not shooting up gay bars and bombing U.S. Army, shooting up Army recruitment centers. They are dealing with it, but not in the same way that poses a threat to the rest of society.
Mark, there are times when I don't even recognize this republic.
Well, there's more and more of that, frankly, that a lot of people are experiencing. And, we're not talking about politics, but, I think that's part of the attraction of Trump, with all his faults, and there's plenty of them, and I haven't been coy about talking about them, but part of the attraction is, that he at least understands that a lot of people don't recognize the republic they live in.
Yeah, two things. First, if we could address the overstayed visas. Again, Drudge Report had a link. It was 480,000 this past year that overstayed their visas, according to the Washington Times, and that's roughly 5 million total. What the hell's going on with that? Why can't our government just enforce the law?
Good question, and there's a number of reasons. First of all, just so people understand, overstaying a visa is now the more new illegal immigrants coming in today are mostly doing it by overstaying visas, not crossing the border. It used to be that something like 60-40 border crossers compared to visa overstayers of each year's new crop of illegal aliens. Now that's flipped. It's something like 60-40 visa overstayers compared to border jumpers. So what that suggests, first of all, is that even if Trump builds a wall 100 feet high and 2,000 miles long, it's still not going to deal with most of the illegal immigration problem. Number one, the first reason is the most important reason is we actually don't have a good idea of whether you've actually left the country or not. There is no system to check foreign visitors out. We have a good system for checking them in. It's actually better than it used to be. It's pretty good. Since 9/11, we really put a lot of work into that. So checking people in when they come here, we do a pretty good job at. Checking them out, though, we do almost not at all. And if you don't know who is left, you don't know who's still here.
The border jumpers, how many annually are we talking about here?
Well, it depends what you're talking about. It could be something like 300,000 to 400,000 a year. Now, other illegal immigrants leave every year or die or somehow get a green card. So the increase in the total immigrant population is less than that. But our estimate is something like 500 plus, 550,000 illegal immigrants a year are settling here, because some of the overstayers may leave, but they may leave, 6 months late. So some of it, in other words, it's not all illegal immigrants coming to stay who are overstaying their visa, but nonetheless, it is the main way that illegal immigrants come to stay, is by coming in as tourists or students or what have you, and then just not leaving because nobody is looking for them. Deporting them is not a priority of this administration, even if they know where they are, and most of the time they don't know who they are.
This is just insane. Before I hand you my microphone to speak directly to my listeners here at 1Dimitri Radio, I do have to ask you this. President Obama and Hillary Clinton, everyone else in America pronounces it Muslim and Islam. They pronounce it Muslim and Islam. What the hell's going on with that?
Well, I don't know. That's one of those affectations where the president says, Pakistan instead, but he doesn't say Afghanistan. It's a silly affectation. You see that in other areas where, remember Peter Jennings used to read the news on ABC a long time ago, and he would always say Nicaragua or something like that. I ask people like this, really? So do you say Moskva for Moscow? Do you say Roma for Rome? Do you say Hayastan for Armenia? Either speak English or don't. And it's kind of a silly and ignorant affectation of people who think basically they're saying they think they're smarter than you, and they're showing they're kind of nincompoops.
Yeah. I love interviewing you. You're always great radio. Mark Krikorian, Center for Immigration Studies, always great radio. And this revelation about ideological exclusion, this is going to be like the lead for my show tonight with the monologue. All right, Mark, we always give my guests the last word here at 1DimitriRadio so that you can speak directly to our listeners. I'm going to hand you my Shure SM7B dynamic microphone. Mark Krikorian, my microphone is yours.
The Center for Immigration Studies is online at CIS.org. That's CIS.org. And we're a think tank on immigration, a small, I call ourselves a boutique think tank instead of a department store think tank, because we deal just with immigration, and we're the only ones who look at it from the perspective of the national interest. There are others funded by the immigration lawyers or funded by industry, or who view immigration kind of in a global context, not in the context of the American national interest. And, we're go there to get educated, but also there's a donate button for anybody who has a few loose coins in their pocket.
Website?
CIS.org.
Social media?
I am on, we're at www.cis.org, all that together with no dots, at the Twitter site. That's our CIS Twitter, www.cis.org. But my Twitter handle, and I tweet actually pretty actively, is Mark S., as in Stephen, Mark S. Krikorian, at Mark S. Krikorian, Krikorian. And I tweet pretty frequently. I've got 9,000-something followers. And I'm kind of, it's a lot of snarky and sarcastic tweeting, but that's kind of who I am. So it's realistic.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Mark Krikorian, always a pleasure. God, I love talking to you. I really do. I hope you have a great day. We'll get you on again soon. You know that. And anytime you want to come on, discuss any other issue, anything, say the word. My microphone is yours. You guys at Center for Immigration Studies do fantastic work, and I hope you have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Hey, I'm a helpful Southern California Honda dealer. You might know us from our Random Acts of Helpfulness. Recently, we gave a veteran a brand new 50cc scooter to help him get to his appointments at the VA hospital. And we can help you get around too, with a great deal on a reliable, award-winning Honda, like the 2016 Accord LX, a 2016 IIHS top safety pick with a built-in rear-view camera. Click the dealer locator link to find a dealer near you, and go to SoCalHondaDealers.com to suggest a random act of helpfulness for someone you know.